welcome back. Today we join two builders as they construct a timber frame cabin deep in the winter woods, relying entirely on hand tools and the materials around them. Stripping the bark is the critical first step. A smooth surface prevents moisture retention and removes the layer where insects typically burrow. The cambium layer underneath is left intact to cure naturally in the cold air. Moving green timber requires sheer physical endurance, especially when working through deep snow. Each raw log carries substantial water weight, making the lift demanding. Positioning these heavy timbers against the rising walls allows the builders to assess the natural taper. Understanding how each log curves dictates its final placement in the structure. It ensures the structural load is distributed evenly across the foundation. Smaller offcuts are repurposed into structural fasteners using a simple hatchet. Carving these wooden pegs requires reading the grain direction carefully. Striking parallel to the wood fibers yields clean, predictable splits, while working across the grain causes tearing. These hand-hewn components will eventually secure the larger joints without the need for metal hardware. Transitioning to the main wall assembly begins with a simple string and chalk dust. A snapped chalk line transfers a perfectly straight plane onto an irregular, round surface. This reference mark is absolute. Because natural logs are never perfectly straight, builders rely on these lines for dimensional accuracy. A shallow relief cut at the end grain severs the outer fibers, guiding the initial split and preventing uncontrolled checking along the length of the timber. Splitting a massive log lengthwise relies on mechanical advantage and patience. Steel wedges are driven directly into the end grain to initiate the fracture. As the primary wedge forces the fibers apart, secondary wooden spacers are inserted down the length of the crack. This sequencing is vital. If a steel wedge sinks too deep without relief, the tension can trap the tool completely. The wooden spacers maintain the separation, acting as temporary shims to relieve compression. Prying the gap wider forces the split to follow the path of least resistance. The wood naturally wants to cleave along its internal growth rings. By methodically marching the wedges down the line, the internal tension does the heavy lifting. The result is two matching halves, yielding flat interior faces for the cabin walls. Hoisting the split halves onto the frame reveals the efficiency of the method. Flat interior walls save space and make future finishing work much easier. Securing the tier requires precise joinery. Chiseling a lateral groove along the bottom of the upper log allows it to saddle the curvature of the log beneath it. This scribed channel is a traditional technique designed to shed water outward. It also creates a cavity to pack natural insulation, locking out the bitter winter drafts. Wooden pegs are driven flush to pin the courses together.
There we go.
Refining the interior face with a drawknife removes splintered tear out from the splitting process. Scraping the surface levels out the high spots, ensuring a uniform plane. The speed square is then used to lay out exact 90-degree reference marks for the corner joints. Accuracy here dictates the stability of the entire structure. A string line stretched across the perimeter verifies that the rising walls remain perfectly plumb and true. Cutting the corner notches requires a crosscut saw, designed specifically to slice across the wood grain. The wide teeth sever the tough fibers, defining the boundaries of the joint. Once the depth is established, a sharp axe effortlessly clears the waste block. Striking with the grain causes the wood block to pop out cleanly. The bottom of the notch is pared smooth to guarantee maximum surface contact between the interlocking timbers. A snug fit here relies on friction and gravity. Settling the log firmly into the pocket compresses the fibers, locking the corner in place. A well-cut saddle notch actually tightens over time as the green wood shrinks and cures. Every swing of the axe brings the frame closer to a weather-tight seal. Finding the right supplemental timber requires scouting further afield. Selecting a tree near a flowing stream often means the wood has grown straight and dense. Harvesting in deep snow adds a layer of complexity to basic felling geometry. A traditional bow saw is ideal for this diameter, providing a thin kerf that removes less material per stroke. The primary cut determines the directional hinge. Creating this undercut notch dictates exactly where the tree will fall, minimizing the risk of it hanging up in the surrounding canopy. Pushing the trunk shifts the center of mass past the hinge point. When the back cut meets the hinge, the remaining holding wood snaps, bringing the timber safely to the ground. Gravity takes over. Bucking the fallen trunk down into manageable sections is necessary for transport. Leaving the heavy branches and crown behind lightens the load. These shorter lengths are cut specifically to match the structural requirements back at the site. Transporting timber by hand requires balancing raw material needs against human endurance. Utilizing a frame pack shifts the shear weight of the green log onto the hips and legs. This mechanical advantage preserves energy for the walk back. In deep snow, a packed trail is an asset, providing a firm surface that prevents exhausting post-holing. Every resource gathered from the periphery feeds directly into the progress at the central clearing. Processing firewood requires a different approach than structural splitting. A manual log splitter uses a captive wedge, offering a safer and highly controlled strike zone. Driving the wood down onto the stationary blade exploits the brittle nature of frozen timber. The concentrated force of the wooden mallet easily bursts the short sections apart along the grain. Freshly split wood must be stacked with proper airflow to season effectively. Curing the wood reduces the moisture content, ensuring a clean, hot burn later. Inside, thin wooden shingles are meticulously arranged into overlapping courses. Shingles function through simple geometry. The staggered seams prevent water ingress, while the downward slope channels precipitation off the roofline. Organizing these materials now sets the stage for a weather-tight exterior. Clearing accumulated snow from the foundation protects the lower sill logs from persistent moisture and rot. In the end, structure, landscape, and routine operate as one unified system. Every notch cut and log laid is a calculated defense against the elements. Survival here is simply foresight in motion.